Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome every one of you, especially to our special guest, Thye and Associate Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak, to this webinar entitled Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, PTSD, and Mental Wellbeing Among University Students during COVID-19 pandemic, organized by the Faculty of Education, University of Malaya. The emergence of this new pandemic, COVID-19, has brought a huge impact to all aspects of human life. This morning, it is our honor to have Thye, a member of Mental Health Promotion Advisory Council, Ministry of Health, Malaysia, to talk about mental health. Before I hand over to Thye, please allow me to give you some background of Thye. Thye is a Malaysian social activist and a former politician. He was born on 30th December 1946 in Ipoh, Perak. He completed his secondary education at St. Michael's Institution in Ipoh, Perak, where he obtained his senior Cambridge certificate in 1965. Thye served as a 3 terms and only member of Parliament for Kuala Lumpur Bandar before it was abolished between 1974 and 1990. His last political office prior to retirement in 1990 was as a member of Parliament for Bukit Bintang. Some of the most significant posts that he has held during his decorated career includes: number 1, Chairman of the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, Ministry of Human Resources, Malaysia; number 2, Vice President of the Association for Preventing Drugs, Malaysia, (MADAM); number 3, Member of the Malaysian National Economic Consultative Council, (NECN); number 4, Member of the Human Rights Commission of Malaysia; number 5, a member of Mental Health Promotion Advisory Council, Ministry of Health, Malaysia; number 6, a member of the Improvement, Transportation and Management Royal Commission of the Royal Malaysian Police. In 1929, Thye has been awarded the 2019 Marudu Rasul Award by the Young Dipertuan Agong during the national level Marudu Rasul celebration. This award is given to Thye as recognition for his contribution in community safety and well-being for the past 45 years. Thye's contributions to this country continue because, at present, Thye is the chairman for a newly set up non-governmental organization, NGO, Alliance for Safety Community, (IKATA), which aims to communitize and promote safety and health awareness in our country. Now it is my great pleasure to invite Thye to deliver his speech. Thye, the floor is yours.
Terima kasih saya mengucapkan kepada Dr. Suet Fen di atas kasih yang beliau telah sampaikan mengenai saya, mengenai latar belakang saya dan juga berbagai sumbangan saya kepada masyarakat negara. Jadi pagi ini saya berasa amat kira kerana dapat dijemput untuk menghadiri dan menyertai webinar di atas tajuk post-traumatic stress disorder ataupun PTSD dan kesejahteraan kesihatan ataupun mental well-being dalam kalangan para pelajar universiti dalam tempoh COVID-19. I'm indeed very happy to be here this morning to participate in this webinar on a very important subject pertaining to mental health. And I would like to take this opportunity to state here that this COVID-19 pandemic has had a great impact on the lives of people around the world. It is a great impact on the lives of the people in all nations, and Malaysia is without exception. Now, this pandemic has a great impact not only on the economic status of our country, Malaysia, and of other countries as well, but what is of utmost importance to me is its impact on the mental well-being of all people all over the world. Now, we in Malaysia are doing our utmost best to cope with this pandemic, and efforts have been undertaken by the Ministry of Health and other relevant agencies, which at one time they were called the frontliners, helping Malaysians to fight COVID-19. What I would like to talk about this morning is on the subject of mental health, mental well-being of all nations. Because there is no doubt that this pandemic has upset, I think, many people in regard to how they are going to cope with the new norms, the new normal as we call it, with regard to how we are able to cope with stress, we are able to cope with depression arising from the multifarious problems which came about as a result of COVID-19. I can mention here, for example, that since the start of the pandemic more than 1 year ago, I have had the opportunity of meeting a cross-section of organizations. And undoubtedly, they complain about their economic status, they complain about how they lose their jobs, how they became redundant, how they were out of employment. And all that, as I said, especially for those who have families, who have children, for example, the psychological impact on them is indeed very great. In fact, afterwards I'm going to tell you a bit later about many who actually contemplated to commit suicide because they were just unable to cope with the situation. They were not able to get the right advice. They were not able to seek help. They were not able to seek the counseling. And they became so depressed that they wanted to commit suicide. Now this webinar is important because Associate Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak from the Faculty of Education, University of Malaya, has done a very extensive research on the question of post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, this is something which I'm also learning about PTSD. It is also part of my learning curve, let me say this. And this study also covered the well-being of all our university students, how they felt about COVID-19, how badly affected they were. And I know something about this because, I happen to serve as the chairman of the Students Volunteer Foundation under the Ministry of Higher Education, where I had the opportunity of meeting university students who told me about their plight, about their difficulties, especially those who come from the B40 group. The B40 group, the poor, and those who are less privileged. They come and complain to me about the cost of living, about their difficulty, in finding enough pocket money to buy food and so on, because they come from very poor families. So this is only one of the many aspects faced by students who are in opportunity. Now I would like to congratulate Associate Professor Dr. Zahari for having undertaken this research. And I hope that this research will be able to provide useful information that can be shared by all, not only in Malaysia, but all over the world. And I believe I'm talking to even many foreign countries, many foreign participants who are involved in this webinar this morning. Now, one of the important things I would like to take this opportunity to reveal here is the fact that Professor Dr. Zahari is an educational psychologist. And I think psychology, is a very important topic now. We talk about the role of the psychologist. We talk about the role of the counselors, to counsel not only the people outside, but also to counsel the students in the universities when they are confronted with serious, psychological issues, mental problems in the universities. So I really hope that from the research that he has done and the data that he is going to reveal later, and the information that he is going to give us, it will benefit students not only in Malaysia but elsewhere. Now, when I talk about mental health, well, mental health appears to be a very simple, just two words. One word is mental, the other word is health. It's a simple two words, mental health. But what does it mean? You see, there are those who have come to me to say, please don't touch on mental health. Because they say mental health is a very sensitive subject. So I asked them why mental health is a sensitive subject. And their answer is this: that when you talk about mental health, you are talking about orang gila. Orang gila, orang tidak siuman. Or in English it means that you are talking about those who are mentally sick, who have, who are going to be insane. Insane, not their normal self. So they say, this is subject is a very sensitive subject. Well, I disagree with that for a simple reason. Is that when we talk about mental health, we must go beyond what people normally assume as, orang gila, people who are mentally unsound. But we must go beyond that, to go into the other realm of things. Because we have to realize that mental health is a very important part of our overall health. Our society, our community, very often relate mental health as a taboo subject, as I said earlier. But I hope with what I'm going to tell you now, you will no longer regard this as a taboo subject, but on the other hand, it must be taken very seriously. Now, when we talk about health, the normal reaction from the people is this. Well, we are talking about our physical health, kesihatan fisikal. We are talking in terms about biological health, with regard to the condition of our bodies and so on. But very often, when people talk about health, they seem to neglect another very important part of health, and that is mental health. Now, according to the World Health Organization, or WHO, mental health is more than absence of mental disorders or disabilities. It is an integral part of health. Indeed, there is no health without mental health. And this is a very important message I would like to convey to all the participants at this webinar. And that is, again, I repeat, no health without mental health. Why so? Mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, how the individual can cope with the normal stress in life, how he or she can work productively and is able to make an important contribution to his or her community. The World Health Organization states, and this is what I want to quote here. The World Health Organization states that close to 1 billion people are living with mental disorder today. And more than 800,000 people die by suicide every year, with many of them having serious mental health issues. Living with a mental disorder, ladies and gentlemen, increases the suicide risk in a person. In Malaysia, according to the National Health and Mobility Survey, 2019, close to 500,000 people are found to be experiencing symptoms of depression. And in this current pandemic of COVID-19, much emphasis is placed on physical health with the aim of flattening the curve. And this is what our Ministry of Health, and I believe all over the world, the health authorities are talking about flattening the curve. And of course, they hope that this can be done through, for example, compliance with the SOPs, compliance with personal hygiene, physical distancing, wearing of face mask, and so on and so forth. Now, what I would like to emphasize here, ladies and gentlemen, is this. Let us not forget that the pandemic and the movement control order, or the MCO, have also caused emotional distress to many. Some feel overwhelmed by the change of the working environment, having, for example, to work from home. Some have lost their income, some have lost their jobs, some fear of safety for themselves, the fear that he or she may be the next victim of COVID-19, affecting not only them, but also their loved ones. And there are also those, as I said earlier, who are struggling with suicidal thoughts. In recent years, there has been increasing acknowledgement of the vital role mental health plays in achieving global development goals, as illustrated by the inclusion of mental health in the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDG. This is because depression is one of the leading causes of disability, and suicide is the second leading cause of death among the 50 to 29-year-olds, as reported by the World Health Organization. And on top of that, people with mental health issues always experience severe human rights issues, violation of certain rights, discrimination, and stigmatization. In Malaysia, ladies and gentlemen, the University of Malaya Specialist Center, or UMSC, reported that by 2020, mental illness was the second biggest health problem affecting Malaysians after heart disease. Now, this was a report from UMSC. By 2020, now we are already in 2021, so it has already exceeded. And it was a fact that mental illness was the second biggest health problem affecting Malaysians after heart diseases. And this is supported by the National Health and Mobility Survey 2019 by the Ministry of Health, which states that 2.3% or 500,000 people of the Malaysian adults suffered from depression. And the highest prevalence is found in Kuala Lumpur, 5.4%. Why Kuala Lumpur? because we know very well that Kuala Lumpur is very much an urbanized environment. And living in an urbanized environment with so many issues and problems, particularly environmental issues, I'm sure that will certainly lead to more stress. Even the traffic jam, for example, the traffic jam in the city. There are people who break the laws. You know why? Because they are so upset by the traffic jams, say they are delayed going to work and all that. So as a result, they end up, using the special lane which they're not supposed to use, and all kinds of traffic offences are committed. And this is because, as I said, living in an urbanized environment like KL, traffic jams, flash floods, all these cause a lot of problems that can lead to the disturbance of your mental health. Now, another point which I want to make here is this. The report from the National Health and Mobility Survey 2019 says that the percentage of female experience depression is 2.6% as compared to male 2.0%. 3.6% of rural Malaysians have experienced depression as compared with only 1.9% from perhaps those far in the interior. And Malaysians from B40 group with household income not more than 5,000 a month is the highest group that faced depression, which is 2.7%. So there's no doubt that the psychological impact is indeed very great, and it has led to various social, psychological, biological factors which have determined the level of mental health of persons at any point of time. And issues such as violence, domestic violence, for example, is indeed also one of the problems arising from serious mental health issues. Childhood abuse. We still read about domestic violence. We still read about children being abused, children being neglected, discrimination, stigmatization. All this is as a result of the poor state of mental health that we are in. So therefore, I'm sure all of you would like to know what can be done. I have stated these issues and problems, which, as I said, are no longer things that people do not know. I think many people are certainly aware of these things that I have mentioned, problems I have narrated. But what is the solution to these problems? I think it's something that I'm sure Prof. Dr. Zahari will be able to share with us later, perhaps there's something to share with us. But I think to me, I would like to deal with it from the point of view of a soft approach. And when I talk about a soft approach, I mean the inculcation of the value of love and care for people around us. I think this is very, very crucial. Love and care. You know, in Malaysia, we have one of our 9 major challenges that the people have to overcome if Malaysia is to be a fully developed nation. And one of these challenges is, how are we going to build a caring nation? How do we build a caring society? How do we embrace caring values? These are important things that I'm sure the people must bear. I really hope that, in our race, in a very competitive world, I use the word raise is because every day people seem to be in a hurry. People in a hurry because they are busy with their job. They are busy making a living. The father and the mother have to work to care for the family. So in this race for more earnings, more income, in this race for a better livelihood, very often we tend to forget the important value of love and care for each other. And this is the main point that I really want to spread with you, to convey with you to all my international friends. We must always be sensitive enough to notify people we know, people who can give help, any emotional and psychological changes or sign of behavioral attitude when someone is faced with a crisis. And we must be able to look at this. We must be able to identify it. And having identified it is important that we must bring it to the attention of those who can help. Because for someone, for example, who is so emotionally traumatized because of COVID, because of the problem rising from COVID, and if there is a tendency for the person to feel that he cannot do anymore, she cannot help anymore, but to think of committing suicide. Now, this is the time when the person is faced with a crisis. And it's only during such times when people like us here, people like you all, who are prepared to show your care and love for your fellow human beings, irrespective of who they are, whether they are your friends or whether they are not your friends, doesn't really matter, who are humans, who are facing such a crisis. This is the time when they need help. This is very important, a time they need help. And this is the reason why I accepted the appointment as the patron of Befrienders Kuala Lumpur. Because Befrienders Kuala Lumpur is doing a big job, a great job. Many people out there may not know, but I know for sure because I am their patron. I work with them. And I know we have the volunteers, 24 hours, go by turns, volunteering their effort to help answer the call of an emergency. People who are about to use a blade, to cut their veins because they say, I have no other choice. I want to end my life. When people are faced with such a crisis, we must show our care. We must show our love to them. And this is one of the reasons why I have been so persistent, so consistent in always advocating that there is a lot more than people out there. And if you are not able to know more about this, I think it's time for us to attend more talks or lectures or whatever seminars that are organized by various NGOs in the country, talking about the role of the psychologists, talking about the role of the counselors, how they can help, and we can be a part of that. Now, there is such a thing as psychological first aid. Now, this is something that has been advocated by the World Health Organization, and I believe we in Malaysia, the Ministry of Health, is fully aware of this, but they may not have sufficient, as I said, manpower, resource to do this, but this is where, as I said, the NGOs can come forward. And in Malaysia, we have the Malaysian Mental Health Association. It is promoting the first aid for mental health, which refers to a person who will become the first responder the first responder, psychological first aid. First aid knowledge will be able to provide the persons with the ability to help someone with mental health problems or in a mental health crisis until appropriate professional help is received or the crisis is resolved. So each and every one of us, we can learn to be a responder, the first responder, and we can give whatever help until such time that the professionals will come and take over the work. Now the second part I would like to talk about is the role of the government. Just now I talked about the role of the community, the society. The government, as you know very well, I think we in Malaysia, the Ministry of Health is taking on this mental health issue. I think we have got a unit in the Ministry of Health that takes care of this mental health. And government has also come forward with various announcements about what the Ministry of Health can do to respond to those who are affected by COVID-19. But I believe that the unit itself, I think, is understaffed. I think we need more people, we need more resources to do this. And of course, this is the reason why I would like to advocate that the NGOs can actually come in to help, because NGOs are supposed to be the partners of the government, working together with the government to provide assistance. Government can also actually help to train through the universities more clinical psychologists. We are very short. We are indeed, especially government, is very, very short of clinical psychologists in the country. We are short of psychiatrists, and we need to train more. Psychiatric care services should be expanded and made available to government and private hospitals, as well as private and non-governmental organizations, such as the Malaysian Mental Health Association, as well as the Befrienders Forum. And of course, the government must always, I think, keep on, creating awareness. It's very important, creating awareness, educating the people that mental health is no longer a taboo subject. It is a subject that we must confront. It is a subject that we have to deal with. It is a subject that we have got to address. So, creating that awareness. And of course, for those who have mental health issues, I think there's no need, for them to be shy. I know there are people with psychological problems. They are afraid. They are afraid to come out to say that I have a problem. Because why? Because they are afraid of stigmatization. They don't want to be stigmatized. If, for example, if somebody knows, my friend, has got some kind of a mental health problem, I'm sure there are others when they come to know and say, please, better stay away from this particular person. So it is this kind of stigmatization that creates a lot of unfairness, creates a lot of injustice to these people who are suffering from mental health issues. So this is the reason why I say government must create more awareness, government must encourage more people to come forward, Government must provide more facilities, more counseling facilities to the people out there who can come forward, no need to go to the hospital, no need to go to the psychiatric department. Because when we go to the psychiatric department, we know it is a very, very serious case. It can be one suffering from schizophrenia. They come to the point where, as I said, if he were to kill someone, he doesn't even know what is schizophrenia. So we don't allow that. We don't need people to go to the hospital, to the psychiatrist. We need more people on the ground. We need people who are caring. We need people who are loving. We need more counselors. We need more NGOs to come and help. Everyone has a role to play. So creating this environment that supports mental health promotion is indeed very, very important. And to promote mental health awareness campaign and to alert the society on the importance of having positive mental health and not forgetting our rules in helping those unfortunate, which I mentioned. Now, the other thing is this, my last point I'm going to bring up just before I conclude the fact that I think the government also can consider to give more help, more assistance to people who are involved in research work, R&D, especially the academicians in the universities who are undertaking certain projects, research these projects, for the purpose of obtaining useful information and data that can be shared by all, for the benefit of the government, for the benefit of the community, and for the benefit of the nation. So grants should be given to researchers for them to conduct research on issues related to mental health, Prof, so that more empirical data can be obtained in designing more effective prevention and intervention programs. And I would like to congratulate University Blair for having just done that. And I think, Prof, I would like to compliment you for a job well done. So, lastly, before I conclude, I would like to use a quotation by Dr. Lauren Fogel. And this is what he said: being able to be your true self is one of the strongest components of good mental health. I repeat, being able to be your true self is one of the strongest components of good mental health. I strongly encourage the Ministry of Education to look into injecting aspects of mental health into the education syllabus. This includes building resilience, learning about stress management, and problem solving skills. Parents play an important role in providing a loving and encouraging environment for children to grow up feeling safe, to express their feelings, and to talk about their mental health openly. Everyone can contribute to the betterment of mental health. And start with self-care practices, such as healthy eating, daily exercising, as well as getting adequate sleep every night. These are some of the very basic things that we can do to help ourselves. Be kind to people around you, something that we can do. And if you know someone who is struggling with mental health, offer emotional support by listening to them without being judgmental. Don't come to any conclusion. Don't come to any judgment. Just be prepared to listen. By giving your ears to someone who is in a state of crisis, it will be tremendous help to the person concerned. Encourage them to seek help, as I said, by consulting a professional or calling a helpline. The helpline, as I mentioned, befriend us. It is important that no one, this is an important sentence I want to make here. It is important that no one gets left behind and uncared for in this time of uncertainty, in this time of challenge and difficulty. COVID-19. Mental health is an essential part of our overall health. I want to be clear. Take care of yourself. Take care of those whom you think you can help and who need your support. And with this message, I'd like to thank you once again for inviting me to this webinar. Thank you.
Tan Sri, for your very inspiring speech. So I believe one of the most important message that we can get from Tan Sri is to love and care. So please spread your love, care for the people around you. Okay, I think that is at least one of the important role that we can play. So now I believe all of you are waiting for another presentation by Associate Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak. I'm sure all of you are eager to know what are the findings from the study which has conducted by Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak, which with the title of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and also mental well-being among the university students. But before Prof begin with his presentation, I would like to give you some background about Associate Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak. So, Dr. Zahari is an educationist and also a psychologist from University of Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. He specializes in quantitative research and conducts training for academicians and researchers. Dr. Thye has presented his paper at international and local conferences. He has published books, chapters in books, and articles in many international and local journals. He completed his sabbatical in the University of Westminster, London, United Kingdom, under Business Psychology Centre for a year in 2016. He has been invited as a visiting scholar at School of Foreign Languages and Literature, East Chinese Normal University, Shanghai in 2016. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak to begin his presentation on post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD and mental well-being among the university students during COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before I start, I would like to, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to say thank you so much, Thye, for your inspiring talk just now. Thank you so much for coming to this webinar. And the most important thing to me when I was a student, I was always admired Thye. Not because he was a member of the parliament, but to me, the inspiring part is when he brought along his calculator inside his car. Long time ago, he brought along his calculator, he brought along his rubber stamp, and anybody can push it. And so that's where when we talk about him just now, it's about the skill. On the behalf of the faculty of education, I just want to say thank you so much. And of course, I would like to have special thanks to my dean, who gave me a very strong support for this webinar. There were so much students who always be there. And the most important thing, I would like to say thank you to the UMRG Special Grant Research, because during the pandemic, during the MCO, I was granted a small token of money to carry out the research. And thank you so much, Zahari. And as for today, I would like to present the data and all the other things. So, ladies and gentlemen, okay, my research is led by me and also by Dr. Moses, of course, the moderator. Thank you so much for being a beautiful moderator this morning. And as we all know, that post PTSD and mental well-being is crucial to to discuss at the moment, especially during the MCO. The MCO is, I would like to start my presentation this morning by looking at the data yesterday. So, as from yesterday data COVID-19, we have new confirmed cases 1,300. Still to be a big number. Second thing, the total activities are 14,000 plus. And the recovery cases, is 1,412. The issue here is very clear that we are now at the process of flattening the curve. But we need everyone to support our fighting, because the fighting will never come to the end. So, at the moment, we have a total death of 1,300 due to the COVID-19. But even though it's a small percentage, but still I would say that the numbers is significant. And as for today, the total confirmed is about more than 300,000. So, let's look at the chronology of the COVID-19 immunization. The first COVID-19 detected was on January 25. And that is last year. It's already more than a year. And then we have the first case involving Malaysia on the February 4th. Normal sweep February. Because at that time, it continued to spread out COVID-19. And of course, everybody will know the first Malaysian link to public cluster. And then on the 16th March, the government takes a stern action. That is the MCO. So, and we witnessed, the first death in March 17th. Then the happy moment takes place. This is the happiest moment for the frontliner, for the Malaysian, because we have the excellent 0 cases at that time. And this was really successful to the Ministry of Health and the frontliners. But then, as for yesterday data, the numbers is 300 plus. So the fighting is still on. So these are something like I would like to share for today talk, because when we are under MCO, we have to face a lot of problems. I think Thye did mention a lot of things that due to the COVID-19 MCO psychological problem. It's not just about the economy. It's not just about the butter and bread on the table. It's beyond that. So we don't want to be a failure state where at the end of the day, our society has a suicidal thought, as what mentioned by Thye. So we can see, the measure or the government control COVID-19, and of course the numbers increase daily. We are very happy today because the numbers seem to be dropping, but still the fight has to go on. Okay, because of this MCO, I think if MCO does not permit us to have social gathering, to go out on the house, to be in the house. So because of that, a lot of study during the pandemic, it will increase the anxiety level. It will increase the stress level, and the worst part that we are worried about the increase in depression. Because if someone cannot handle depression, it will link to the suicidal thought. So this is where I see that it is the importance of my research. I see that economy is important. Butter and bread on the table is important. But look at the human, look at the psychological impact. And of course, the social distancing, isolation, quarantine, all these kind of things will be heavy toll to the mental well-being. I just like to share my story when I was abroad before the episode started. So when I returned from Palu, Indonesia with my student, because we have to do some charity work in Palu, Indonesia. And then when we returned back to Malaysia, it's already announced MCO. Every of my students, 40 of us, was so worried that we would be affected by COVID-19. But to do the swab test during that time, we need to have a queue. I was very lucky because I was monitored by my friend who happened to be a doctor and told me, Zahari, please quarantine yourself at home. So I have to quarantine myself at home for more than 14 days. And that is the first time I feel alone. I feel very lonely. Just imagine that for the food that I need to take during my breakfast, lunch, or dinner or supper, my family will put the food outside the door. Waiting them to go down, then I have to wait for 3-4 minutes. I open the door and I take the food inside my room, eating alone. That is taxing to me because I never did this before. When I having a lunch, we have a friend and chatting a lot of things. And I was also lucky because this son be monitored by my friend who's a clinical doctor, also by the PTUM, and always giving me a call. Hello, Dr. Zahari, are you okay? Because my friend said that if anything happens, any changes on my behaviors or my health, the ambulance will straight away to my house. So the quarantine 14 days really left me a huge impact. I can understand because I cannot, because at that time during my quarantine, my mother is in my house. As an old person in my house, I'll be more careful. So because of that, during the quarantine, I have my networking, try to sit down, try to figure it out whether I can have a grant, especially during COVID-19. Thanks to UN, because they have located, even though not so much money, but still I can carry out the research. So, because why I would like to see the undergraduate student? Because I put my undergraduate students who are born 1994 and above, a fragile generation. Later on, I will try to talk about the fragile generation today, our young generation. So, because of that, I will say that the student need to stay indoors and not allow them any social activities which are very much different from their normal routine. So, then the ideas of looking at the PTSD techniques and mental well-being. I do agree with Thye. Thye talks a lot of mental health where it's not supposed to be a taboo. In Malaysia, when people talk about mental health, people talk about someone is very insane, mad people. That's very bad. So there is a difference between mental well-being, mental health, and mental illness. So for PTSD, I just like to quote from the American Psychiatric Association. PTSD meaning that it can happen to anyone, any individual who have experienced, the number one, experience or witness a traumatic event such as natural disaster, a serious accident, a terrorist act, war, combat, or rape, or who have been threatened with death or sexual violence. So if we witness and experience that case, most probably we need to have a look at the PTSD. And when we talk about PTSD, we have a component on that, on the dimensions of PTSD. The dimension that I like to share here is on the avoidance. Those who have PTSD usually try to avoid thinking or talking about the traumatic event. Being a normal person, even though something that is enjoying moment, happy moment, we like to share. But when it comes to a traumatic moment, we choose not to share because it's embarrassing that it is. So because of that, the avoidant behavior keep on developing. The second part is on the negative changes in thinking and mood. So we feel hopeless about the future. At the moment in Malaysia now, we have our graduation day. Most of our students will graduate. They have the degree, they study for 4 or 5 years to obtain the degree. But sometimes, somehow, because of the limited works, that also develop the thinking of focus for the future. And these are something that need to be addressed carefully. And besides that, the one typical of PTSD is trouble concentrating or focusing or sleeping pattern. And of course, another thing that we like to see within my research is on the intrusive memories. This intrusive memory, the thought that always happen inside our mind, unwanted memories, something that keep on occurring inside our mind and can also cause PTSD. So, let's look at the mental well-being. So, when we talk about mental well-being, I think Thye talk a lot too regarding the mental well-being. And I said, Thye give a very good speech on mental well-being. I think we need to invite Thye to come lecture here to talk about mental health as a professor or adjunct professor, just to see what is said, the carry and the. So when we talk about mental well-being, we relate person psychological functioning, life satisfaction, and ability to develop and maintain mutual benefiting relationship. So these two constructs that we found that important for undergrad because they are the future leaders. So you want to see some data, some empirical data there. And of course, when we talk about the dimension in mental well-being, I would like to say that is on the dedicated dimension. Our samples, our undergrad students able to have coping strategy to deal with their life, especially during COVID-19, especially during pandemic. Today, we have 1 year plus, we are on pandemic COVID-19, and nobody knows in future the COVID-19 virus can turn himself or themselves into a monster COVID-19. It's a living thing that we need to adapt and adopt within our life. So, able to have a good, positive mental well-being is very crucial. The second dimension that I would like to see is on the positive mental well-being is on the psychological flexibility. Meaning here, my student is able to be flexible, especially during COVID-19. Can they become flexible to cope the whole scenario? And among the other dimensions that I would like to see is on the perspective. the ability to develop and apply a healthy and positive perspective. We hope by having a positive mental well-being, my undergrad student or all the undergrad students were able to apply a healthy, positive perspective about COVID-19. So, as I mentioned just now, it's not just about passing and grade on people, but the psychological issue. So, and the last dimension on mental well-being is a healthy sense of self, meaning here aware his own strength or his own confidentiality or confidence. So with that introduction, I will start my objective. So for this talk, I only have two objectives. The first objective is to examine the PTSD and mental well-being among students during COVID-19 pandemic. I just want to know, we just want to know whether our students have this issue or not. And of course, the second thing is to disseminate the data where I will see that I will stand with the data that I as the leader for this project. And the team that I will try to recommend is to do some recommendation for the country and especially for my undergrad students. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we get the data. Our data is a cross-sectional study. So we have all the undergraduate students, the whole Malaysia, to be our participant with one inclusive criteria. They must experience or feel during the MCO. That's true because as you can see, the data collection was from like 20 September to 30th October 2020 using the online or the Google form. I have to be able to adapt myself using the online survey. And it's one good thing on the online survey, because all of my participants really answer my question. Because we set up in our system, if you don't answer one item, you have to go back to the item and answer all the items. And that is a very good data because we don't have any missing value. So to get a sample during the pandemic, during the MCO, during the COVID-19, what we do, we are using the snowball sampling technique. When we see a snowball sampling technique, it's something that rolling from one student to another student. Of course, a lot of people start to say, well, Dr. Zahari, this is not a random sampling. It's not strong enough to justify the data. But at the same time, we must accept during pandemic, during MCO, we are not allowed to move from the house. The only way to get the data is by online. So that's where we actually beat the young generation. If we are using the hard copy, sometimes I see a lot of students, for example, my student, Miana or Salima, she was doing PhD under me. She collected the data using the hard copy, and there's a lot of missing value. There are a lot of outliers within the data. So we have to clean and clean to get the good data in order to stand the findings. So there's a beauty, of course, when we say confidence sampling. The confidence sampling, to me, during the pandemic is acceptable. That is my personal view. So, then we look at the instrument. We are using the PTSD instrument. It's a checklist with the 20 items, self-reported, 5 wicket skill. And this was a valid instrument. I don't know what instrument they are operating. So for those of my students, please remember that, I always make a joke with my students. Don't ever try to pick any instrument after training one night. It can happen that way, they have a process. So I just like to share the most important part. That is, if the score is between 31 to 33, that respondent is already benefit to the PTSD questionnaire. Then, of course, in my research, I will put the benchmark. The benchmark is above 31, you have a symptom. You start to develop the symptom of PTSD. I just like to mention once more so that nobody can misquote my statement. I repeat one more time. The student already start to develop the symptom of PTSD. I don't say it's proper 100%, but the symptom can be alive, can be very scary. So these are the first instruments that I use. The next is about mental well-being instrument. Again, this is a very strong, valid instrument because we get the approval to use this instrument from University of Warwick, and it was known as a Warwick Anti-Ground Mental Well-being Scale. Consists of 14 items and also 5 response categories. It was developed by University of Warwick and Anti-Ground 2006. So again, why I have to use 2 instruments? As I said just now, PTSD, when you have to score more than 31, you are at risk to have symptoms in PTSD. But for mental well-being, if you score less than 40, you are to be considered a mental well-being problem. Or at least you have anxiety, depression, and stress. So, of course, there is also another research. Put the benchmark as 41 to 45 score and consider high risk of psychological distress and increased risk of depression. So, these are the instruments that we use for this research. So, let's look at the outcome. I think these are among the most important things that I would like to share. When we look at the outcome today for this PTSD and mental well-being, the compound alpha is almost near to 1. Hardly you get 1, Sarima. It's very difficult to get 1 and impossible to get 1. Actually, in the quantitative research, it's impossible to get 1. But to reach the level of 0.956, this instrument stands a strong reliability to diagnose PTSD. That's true for the mental well-being too. And if you look at the mental well-being, the score for the compound alpha is 0.921. When my student doing PhD under me, they always complain to me, Dr. Zahari, my compound alpha was low, blah, 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 blah. That's why I say the most important thing in quantitative research is the instrument, among the most important criteria. If you choose the wrong instrument, throw away your research. Of course, I would not to say that to my student, but it's a learning process. So, these are the data that we get during the pandemic or during COVID-19 MC. period. So we have 606 samples. Honestly, if I drag a little bit longer, I can get 1,000 samples easily based on snowfall and 10 minutes. But I stopped because I believe that the numbers is enough. I have my reason on that particular issue. So let's look at the data now. As you can see, as usual, the female always show the higher score or the higher response. Maybe because they see now more female than male, I believe. So honestly, I need more male psychologists. But still, it's open for everyone. I'm not a gender bias. So male is only on 37%. So on the other organization sample that I did is the university student. So this university starts from the Kuala Lumpur and the Sabah as well. Because it's no more sampling pattern. You can roll until Malaysia. So that's where we have quite a high numbers for the university student. And then we have also teacher training institute, about 12%. And the college, about 2.8%, where the college is also all under the public university or under the Ministry of Higher Education. And we try to have more mix on the sample. So that's where we try to have the samples on the field of the study. You can see that 61% or 62% is a social science student which involve religious study, education, arts, music, laws, and of course 38% is a science student who belong to the biomed student, clinical doctor, engineering, pharmacies, and all goes under science student. So, let's look at the post-traumatic data. So, this is the data that I would like to share today. Looking at the data, we are so shocked and surprised because we have 43 or 44% of my sample now having and start to develop the symptom of PTSD. It's almost half from the population. So again, I say when we go for the psychometric or youth population, I would say that they are all at risk. Then let's go for the category. We categorize from 31 to 40 score. And it's about 14%. Not so bad, I say that. This will be on the first stage. Then 8.4% score 41 to 50. That is already start to be alarming. But what the wake-up call for me is the score above 51. So we found that it's almost 21%. 21% of our students. Sorry, that's a question. I don't know why. Is there something that lead to a technical problem issue? Okay? Oh, sorry, because I was not the IT person. So, okay. I like to repeat one more time that the score above 51 need to be considered carefully, need to be addressed carefully. Because they are at risk to have a symptom of PTSD. We just imagine that out of 1,200 plus students is having PTSD trauma and need to be referred to the professional clinical psychologist, psychiatric professional. These are the data that really cut me or to share this webinar. Of course, we also have just imagine that technically based on the data, we have 1.3% who score highest 71 to 80. And that's really enough. So that's where I said when we talk about the young generation who born 1994 above, these are the issues that we address. Okay, that is about the PTSD respondents overall. Now let's look at the comparison between gender. So if you look at the comparison between gender, well, the issue of females still higher than male. So, on the other words, we like to say that the females are more prone to PTSD. Well, so if go cut across between the total of 31 to 40 until 71 to 50. I just want to highlight the score between 51 above, where I mentioned just now it's about 21%. It's all demonstrate that the females are higher than the male. And you can see here, it's about 9.5%, 2.6, 1.8. And still, we must also consider the male also start developing the quite scary, but that is the data that we need to deal with. So now let's look at the mental well-being. For the mental well-being, research is not good. So as I mentioned earlier, the less score, the more problematic regarding mental. It's not the highest score, ironically. So I start with my whole data that show that 58% of our undergraduate students now facing the mental well-being. More than 50%. That is the last year data, I would say that at October 2020. Now the MCO is still ongoing. So I think that the data on the percentage will increase. So of course the highest score is between 41 and 45. Still I use that benchmark to look at the mental well-being. So then the score keep on reducing. But the issue of score 28 to the score below 30 is need to be considered. Why? Because the score between that range, is classified at risk of having stress, anxiety, and depression. So I will strongly suggest to those who have this high risk, to seek for professional help. Now let's look at the comparison between gender. Not so surprised because when you look at the gender, because of the exam that take place, assignment need to be done by the student. So the mental well-being data show quite a balance between the male and the female. It's almost balanced. You can have 58%, 57%, it's almost balanced. And cut across all the scores. So on certain certain things, I would say that only at score 40, the female demonstrate the higher. And 31 to 35. And that shows that for mental well-being is almost the same. The male or female need to seek for the professional help. Now, someone asked me, for my research study, why we have to look at these two components? Well, one, as I mentioned just now, the high score shows symptoms of PTSD, and the second one is lower that shows that the probability in mental well-being. Why I did that? Because I just want to triangulate the data to make sure that the student really understand the whole pictures of the psychological impact. So as a researcher, we would like to see that, so that when we triangulate the data, is something that the data can be trusted and we stand for the data. So let's look at the second thing, the comparison. The comparison between PTSD and mental well-being. I would say that these are the important percentage that need to be highlighted today. Number one, we have 40 or 44% having or develop the symptom of PTSD. What scary numbers? 44%, almost half. And for mental well-being, it's about 58%, more than 50%. Again, I would like to repeat. This data was last year, during the second stage of vaccine. So now let's look for the next slide. Okay, I like to compare the gender. Sometimes I like to compare the gender because a lot of research show on psychological impact between genders. The most important thing to me is to look at both variables or both constructs. Number one, the PTSD, female still dominant. You can see that 39% female develop symptoms of PTSD. And male also is about 25%. And MW is almost the same number. So with this kind of data that we stand, we are worried about our undergraduate students. They will be coming back to the university. It's not just about the economic factor. It's about to see the psychological issue. And that's where the webinar today is like to highlight the importance of psychological issue around undergraduates. So, we did some recommendation or suggestion for this topic. So, based on the data that quite scary and alarming, I believe that, and I really honestly say that it should be more grant given to the authentic researchers to get more empirical data rather than the hearsay. So when we have the empirical data, it's much easier for us to deal with the psychological problem. Of course, this research, a small research with the small numbers of grants, we only want the undergraduate. But I believe the PTSD and mental well-being should cut across all the group. We need to see the single mother, the single parent during pandemic. We need to see those who lost the job, teachers in school. They are facing a lot of problems in school. They have to conduct online class and so many things. Are the equipment or the internet ready for our teachers? Not just that, we can also remember elderly, people like me, Lastly, we also need to see and look on the psychology of the especially PTSD. And I will say that I want to start one more time, including the frontliners. I mean, the frontliners seem to be left behind on the psychological aspect. I have a lot of friends who are from the clinical doctor, they start to share they are very stressful. So, because of COVID-19, they have to go to work and so many things. So, of course, during my online class, I also like to share. Maybe it's an isolated case, but there's a few of my students having a depression during the pandemic. They can't do the assignment, they can't do the exam. So they come and tell me, I say, never mind, forget it about your assignment, forget it for your test, please seek for the professional help. And they went. Some even ended in the psychiatric department, some even take some medication. And after having a proper professional help, they're still able to complete the assignment and the test. Even though their deadline is over, I still accept it because it's a pandemic issue. So these are the issues that I believe that we need to handle. Because the data seems to be quite scary to me as a psychologist, as a researcher. And as I also agree with Thye just now, the government established that we have a lot of government did a lot of things together with the country. I never denied it. So, but to provide assistance for delivery psychological is important to us. Not just that, to develop our strategic plan. So the problem with our society or our country, I can say that we don't really have a proper planning to handle the psychological problem. We just take the issue and try to solve it without having a proper way to understand the whole thing. The pandemic can come again. It may be not because of COVID-19, it may be due to another issue, but still it's a pandemic. So are we going to say that, well, after pandemic 19 over, so we don't need any plan for any global or substance plan to handle, to address the psychological problem? No. That is something that we need to prepare. When there is a crisis, I still remember when a tragedy happened during the MH17 when he was all of a sudden lost in our brother, and we have a lot of psychological problems. We just take anyone that we believe in and try to help them. To me, they should have a group of a professional to look at the crisis, as the one suggested by Thye just now. And the data is keep on increasing, I would say. And not just that. So, as Thye said, that there should be a 24/7 contact, because talking is the best medicine for you. But to talk to whom can we talk? The person that we trust. Don't simply talk to someone that you don't trust. It may destroy the whole psychological problem. So my sincere advice, get the professional help. And I would say that, the social media should also play a role here to look on this issue, not just because of the economic issue. We have to remember, we start to reopen the school. The university students are coming back to university. The shopping complex now are very happening at the moment. We can say that we need to follow the SOP and so many things. But still, the most important thing is the social media that can play an important role. It can be a negative, it can be a positive way to look at this issue. And another recommendation, I would say that these are things that from the micro perspective. So I would say that stay connected with friends and family members. I still remember that if I was quarantined at more than 14 days. I don't have support from my friend, from my family. I will become insane. I would say that because eating alone, sleeping alone, and you do nothing, and that really affects me. So I was very lucky because I was, as I mentioned, monitored by a doctor. And just to say, hey, hello, Zahari, how are you? Every morning, I say, I'm fine. But still, when I have a sore throat, it's triggering me. I have a COVID-19 now. So that's the thing that always feel me scared because I was quarantined. And sometimes I lost my appetite due to the quarantine issue. I might have a COVID-19 positive. So these are the issues that really harass me. But I say that I'm very lucky to have a support from the family, from my networking, from the friends and my counselor. And of course, as Thye said, that return to a normal daily activities are that means you have good enough sleep. Rest well. Do something that we love, we enjoy. If you like to sing, please do and sing. Nothing wrong with singing. If you enjoy reciting the Quran or the Bible, please do so. Nothing wrong. So that is the thing that and of course you need to engage the regular exercise. Even during my quarantine 14 days in my room, I did a light exercise just to make sure that I'm fit and I have enough. I have appetite to eat. And once the MCO, the water was over, I went out there to my gardening. That's because that made me enjoy my backyard. There's a few places that I can do my gardening. Do something that you enjoy. If you like to jog, of course during MCO, everything is prohibited. And then I would like to suggest that you must try to avoid alcohol and drugs in order to maintain our positive psychology. Well, because that's where my sample is undergraduate. So if I have time later on, I will try to discuss more on the young generation or Generation Z. Because the moderator keep on looking at me, so that where they're going to end. So I said, well, I will stop over. So, and then, as we all know, we should try to get help from the professionals. So, with that, I would like to stop my presentation. And I believe that the moderator, looking at there's so many questions there. So I will now pass the baton to Dr. Loh. Thank you so much, everyone. And the baton now. I have to step in.
Yes. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Dr. Zahari Ishak, for the very informative data sharing sections. I'm sure all of us now are having a much better understanding of the scenario of COVID-19 and the huge impact that has already resulted among our university students. So we just remember, as suggested by Prof, this is only one group of our Malaysians. Then what about the single parents, the elderly? I concern a lot about elderly because I myself have both parents are elderly, so I'm always very much concerned about them, especially during the COVID. Okay, so Prof, your responsibility has not ended yet because I have received a few questions that I think you can provide the answer or the responses to all these questions from the audience.
Why don't you answer all the questions?
I can't because I'm not a presenter today.
So you are also a listener on this part. Never mind. I will put it this way, okay? my friend, I put it this way, if I can't answer the question from the floor, from the YouTube, I will pass to the person. He's an expert.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Okay, the first question is, from this webinar, we have been hearing the words mental well-being, mental health, mental well-being, mental health, mental health has been discussed by Thye. So actually, we would like to know, are they the same or they are different?
Well, good question from the moderator. But I just want to share this with you before I respond to the question. Whatever question that the moderator here can answer. But of course, I would like to respond to the question. What are the differences between mental well-being and mental health? That is a difference. So mental well-being is more on looking at yourself. How positive are you on your relationship with the society? So it's always linked to the mental health. When we say that mental health is about the emotional disturbance. And it's a very serious already. So that's where when you reach the levels of mental health and the worst scenario is mental illness, then the professional help need to be considered. So they always link from mental well-being to mental health and to mental illness. The most important part to me is when we start to develop high anxiety, high depression, high levels of stress. The worry most of us as a psychologist that the young generation start to develop the thought of suicidal. I think Dr. mentioned quite often that the young generation already start to develop this kind of life, to commit suicide, to end their life. So that's where how important is mental well-being. Of course, I use mental well-being because I'm using the mental well-being scale from Enrico and Bob. I hope that answers you.
Okay, so in other words, Prof, they can be used interchangeable?
Not really interchangeable because it will lead to the mental health.
Okay.
It's not an interchangeable with people. So, my dear student who happen to listen to my talk, please know the different disposition. So, as I agree with Thye, when people talk about the mental health, it's always a taboo. People say you are sick, you are mad. In Malaysian word, they call gila. So these are the things that we should withdraw from our society. Someone's sick, we need to go for help and get the professional help. It's easy to get a clinical doctor if you have something cut on your body. So just go and see a clinical doctor and just wipe it or what to do. But some people problem can't see. But it's there. So that's where I totally agree with Thye. That's where I always admire Thye, and as an icon, he was inspired for the Malaysian, for the king, for the love, for the country, for the harmony, for the unity of the citizens. And I was so happy that Thye shared what's the I think I have to talk because the moderator looking very shocked at me. So
Okay. So the next question, actually also I'm interested to know, okay?
You interested to know or interested?
All of us, because based on your data shows that the number of positive COVID-19 cases are still very high. So based on your experience as a researcher and a psychologist, do you think our country, Malaysia, how long does it take to be free from COVID-19? Can you just give us some, some thought or some view on this?
Okay, thank you so much for the questions. I really like to respond this question. Okay, my dear friends, the most important thing when I look at the data we already reached an excellent for 0 case, 1st July 2020. So as for yesterday, numbers are come down, 1,300 cases, new cases. You just imagine that how long it would take to have a 0 case, and the most important thing, the 0 case should go for 28 days as a benchmark. 28 days, we have 0 case. Then our country will be free from pandemic, or free from COVID-19. 28 days with 0 case, I think there's long way more to go. We need to fight. The vaccine itself is not good enough, because we start to open our economic sector. We start to open our school, and the socialization take place. Are our students ready with the Assoc? We always grumble for wearing masks. And we always say that, well, stupid mask. And sometimes we go along the way, you can see a lot of people throwing the mask. And that's a very bad habit for Malaysia. That's where I say, to get 0 case for 28 days is a long way more to go, but it's not impossible. The MOH, the government takes certain strong actions, MCO, increase the penalty and so many things. But still, I would say that following the SOP will make 0 case faster or earlier. Okay.
Okay, so I believe that we need to work together to achieve the 0 case. Okay. But the next question, I think, Prof, is come from a researcher, because in this researcher's view, this person, individual, says that collecting data using a questionnaire in this individual's view might not really reveal the actual scenario of the issue. Do you agree with that? Collecting data using a questionnaire?
Well, thank you so much for this question. I think this is a good question for everyone. Some people do not believe in the questionnaire. They say it does not reveal the actual. Again, as I mentioned earlier, when we choose the instruments, when we choose the questionnaire, please be careful. It's not the questionnaire that you plug under the coconut tree. You cannot do that. They have a reliability, they have the validity. It's not about the reliability that matters, it's the validity of the instrument. I will say that when we did the research, after collecting the data, we do thoroughly looking at the data. And the most important thing sometimes we do to the extent of looking from the CFE or confirmatory factor analysis. And we found that the most instrument, PTSD and mental well-being, the data fit the measurement model. In other words, we, or I personally, as the leading for this project, stand for the data. Because our instrument is a valid and reliable instrument. Again, I would like to repeat, don't come to me and plug the instrument anywhere. You need to see carefully the process of validating the instrument, so that when we measure something, it's really measuring the process. It can be any instrument, it can be any psychological instrument, but the most important thing is the instrument measuring the fact or the construct or the other. So I think that answers me.
Okay, so the last question or the last request from us is, Prof, can you please share with us what is the most important message that you would like to give to the audience from all outside Malaysia about this presentation? Are you going to motivate us with some statements or message? Thanks, Prof.
Well, the last question from the beautiful lady and beautiful moderator. I would say that, well, Dr. Lu asked how shall I motivate the audience, especially myself. I'm so sorry I beg to differ. Because my talk is not the motivational talk. Because I don't believe so much of motivational talk. Because they are glamorous, instant artists, they can talk a lot of things, they are influencers there. But still, I would say that motivation talk, sometimes full of rhetoric. My presentation is about sharing information, sharing the data, sharing the truth knowledge, the truth fact, based on the reality, based on the contextual. Why? Because at the end of the day, I would like to create, develop awareness in our thinking. We don't want to have a person who are conformity style. I want to see my student to be a scientific thinking, able to argue. I see that when I present the data, even though the data can be descriptive data, but we stand for that. Second thing is about the evidence base. We don't just see because of the hearsay. And for this research, we will go for the second stage. Starting from today, we will go for the second stage. There is a qualitative part. We will involve the focus group discussion and in-depth interview to triangulate all the data so that we get the actual information from the qualitative perspective. So because of that, I would like to repeat, it's very tough, it's very painful to get the real data, or it's very painful to get the real facts. People don't want to see the real facts. So please get the right facts. Because by the right facts, the right information will lead to the awareness in our mind. And I hope everyone who listens to my talk will start to develop a scientific thinking. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. You may take a rest now.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I can take a rest.
Yes. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, before we end our webinar, as you all know, Thye is always the Malaysian icon on how to share loves and cares to others. This is evidenced by the recently established NGO group, which is the Alliance of Safety and Health, Community Safety, IKATA by Thye himself. Actually, I'm a member of that IKATA. So that is the evidence that this icon of Malaysia, Thye, he's always continuously in sharing love and care. So with that, I would like to invite Thye to give us a few words, especially on how to share our love and care to the community. Okay, and to close the webinar of today. Please, Thye.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and webinar participants. Now I have spent almost an hour listening to Dr. Zahari's presentation with regard to his findings arising from the research, the survey that he conducted among 606 respondents on the subject of PTSD and as well as MW or mental well-being. Now I must compliment Dr. Zahari for not only the effort that he has put in with regard to the survey, but also on the fact that he presented a very strong case with regard to the empirical data as well as the information that he shared. And he had insisted that whatever he had done was actually based on evidence and based on facts. Now, I don't wish to take too long time to wind up this webinar, but I just want to reflect on one very important, and that is, I think we have to take very serious note of the recommendations that we made, some of which I have mentioned earlier in my talk this morning, and that is with regard to the need, I think, for the government to do more in the area of research and development, providing more grants to academicians, to universities, to do research on specific issues. And of course, this is in regard to the post-traumatic stress disorder as well as mental well-being. Now, there are a few things that I think we can at least capture from here, but I do not know as whether Dr. Zahari would like to have these findings to be made public. It's up to Dr. Zahari himself to decide. But if I were to be asked for my opinion, I feel that if there is any research that is done that is based on a solid study, solid research, I think such data, such information, such statistics, I think need to be made. But firstly, I think it's more important that we must reveal this, I think, to the government. I think the government must be aware of the seriousness of the problems. I think with regard to what has been pointed out by Dr. Zahari, and that is with regard to almost about 44%, 43.9, 44% having signs or the symptoms of PTSD, and also 58.2% of issues that are related to mental well-being. Now, I would say that these statistics it should be studied very carefully by the government. And having studied this, even all the government needs further clarification, then perhaps I think Dr. Zahari is prepared to come forward to discuss with the authorities. And having obtained all this information is also very important that the government must be prepared to act. How does the government help? As I said, in the areas of this providing more assistance, contributions, grants to the universities. Number two, as has been suggested, the government should establish an agency to provide assistance for individuals who face psychological stress during the pandemic. Now, I believe, of course, this is something that the Ministry of Health is doing, but I think with limited resources from the Ministry of Health, because what they have now is an enlarged unit with regard to this mental health in the ministry. But I believe that the government should eventually, they should even be prepared to enlarge this unit into a specific department. Because if the government can have a department, then at least there can be more personnel, more people can participate in it, and be able to do more in terms of helping those who need help. And of course, again, as I said, all the other NGOs, they can come in to assist. And also, even I would also like to say that the corporate sector, the private sector should also play a role, because for the simple reason that even the employees in the private sector, for example, are also affected by mental well-being issues. And I think this is something which they have got to take home. And this is the reason why I am constantly reminding the private sector about the importance of making sure that there are counseling services are made available at the workplace, so that if at all any employees have any mental well-being problems, they can come forward, and they can discuss with the counsellor in private, for example, and then the counsellor may be able to help find a solution. And because this is important, because at the end of the day, it is related to the productivity of the organization. Because if your workforce has mental well-being, if your workforce always being advised and counseled on methods pertaining to their mental stress, their mental well-being, then I think they will be more productive in the workforce. They don't have to worry about all these issues. They will not be suffering from anxiety and also, the hopelessness and so on. At least there are people to counsel that. The private sector must take this as a very important suggestion. The private sector must make available counseling services at all workplaces, especially the multinational corporations and so on. Now, the other part I would like to mention is about the COVID-19. Now, a very important question that is asked is, when will COVID come to an end? Now, I must say here that I really do not have the answer to this question. Of course, Dr. Zahari has said, well, if you want to achieve zero COVID, then for 28 days, a full month, there will be zero COVID cases. Then perhaps then the time that we can safely say that we may be free from COVID. But I think the important thing to be is, I think, as to how long we have to fight COVID, I think the important thing to bear in mind, we have to depend on ourselves. We have to depend on our capabilities. We have to depend on our own self-discipline. Now, I have spoken many a times on this COVID issue, that discipline is very important. Now, we have the SOPs, but if the people, for example, there are still people who do not comply with the SOPs. They don't wear the face mask. Even those who wear the face mask, they don't wear it properly. Some will have to pull down the mask. They will wear it around their neck, and then when you see an enforcement officer, they quickly pull down, just to avoid getting a summon. I think this is the wrong approach. This is the wrong attitude. And that's why I say self-discipline is very, very important. Because if we can be self-disciplined, then all the more quicker and faster will we be able to collectively work towards flattening the curve and also achieving zero COVID cases. Now, so there are things that are within our control. There are things which are beyond our control. Now, if there are things within our control, then I say we can do it. For example, we have to comply with the face mask, social distance, carry hand sanitizer, be more hygienic, and all that. This is within ourselves, within our control. We can do it. So if these are things that within our control, why can't we do it? So it's a question of the determination. It's a question of self-discipline. So this is what I always believe. But of course, there are things beyond our control. What are the things beyond our control that can lead to COVID? For example, if you don't mind, I want to be very frank here. If, for example, if some political parties, they decide, let's have a general election as soon as possible, when we are not fully ready for that, then I say there is something beyond our control. Because, as I said, we may say that we do not want to have an election, but then if there are people in authority, governments, political parties, they decide that there is a general election. So what can the people do to stop them from having an election? Nothing we can do. There is something beyond our control. Like, for example, what happened to the election in Sabah. We all know that for the first few months when COVID started, our Director General did a great job. He did a great job. Director General Health, he managed to flatten the curve. And with NCO, with the frontliners coming in, the enforcement authorities all over the country, did a fantastic job, brought down that curve, flattened the curve, and even we were managing towards a single figure. But unfortunately, when the summer elections came, everything went out of control. So my worry is always this, that there are things which we can do it with the discipline. But there are things beyond our control, then I think would be very difficult. That's the reason why I always maintain that before the authority decide anything, whether it is a general election or whether it is any event that they want to do, please bear in mind. Ask yourself this question, are we ready for it? If you are not ready for it, then I say you better have a second thought. You better have a second thought. I'm speaking very freely, very frankly, because I represent an NGO. I cannot speak for government. I am not against the government. But what I'm trying to say is this: I believe an NGO like my NGO, we are alive in a safe community. We always bear in mind the safety of the people, the safety of the community. And that is the reason why anything we do, we always advocate for safety. And I think it is in the interest of the safety of the country, of the people. It is important for the government to take very seriously about anything that can lead to a serious situation with, say, the coming back of the fourth wave of COVID-19. So I think lastly, as I said, I would really like to render my fullest support to Dr. Zahari. I think with the effort that they are doing, I really hope that these findings that we have will continue, as I said, to move on to the next step where we can do more in terms of unraveling or revealing more facts with regard to the subject that we are so concerned. But as I said, at the end of the day, what I'm really concerned with, I'm concerned about the future generation of the young generation. Because even without COVID, we know that there are many out there of all these ages. And the young ones are the ones who actually are the ones who feel the most. In terms of the stress, even when they go to school, they are facing exam. We are having an education system that is very exam oriented. That itself already causes stress. That itself is what. But as I said, they have also other problems like coming from the poor families. The children have to worry about the financial support that can be given to them. And this is the reason why I'm helping a lot through one of my private foundations, the Eco World Foundation, where we have adopted 3,000 poor students before COVID. 3,000 poor students. We take care of all of them. We take care of their food, we take care of their uniform, we take care of their books, everything, because we want to relieve the burden of their parents. So even without COVID, already many people, as I said, the young people have their form of stress. The elderly people, they have their form of stress, a different form. Those people working also, they have stress, the management. So even without COVID, these things are already bad. So as I said, what more if COVID comes? When COVID comes, all these get worse. Problems get from bad to worse. So as I said, these are real challenges that we are facing. The biggest challenge that we have ever had to face in global pandemic COVID-19. But my mind, as I said, COVID is not going to come to an end so soon. We may have to live with COVID. We have to live with COVID for the next 2 to 3 years at least, from my point of view. That's the reason why I'm telling people, vaccination, please. Please take a positive attitude towards vaccination. You see, if you are given a chance, you are getting a free jab. You don't have to pay. Government is going to take care of the jab. Please register my search account. Because that is one way which you can help. You can help to bring down the COVID. You can help to fight COVID by getting yourself vaccinated. And another aspect which I think is very important is there are those who say, oh, I don't feel safe if I take a jab and so on. Please don't be influenced by all this, what I call fake news. Fake news. Fake news coming from the social media are the worst that I can ever see. It is important, as I said, when we talk about the vaccines, we are talking in terms of science. We are talking in terms of scientific things. We are not talking in terms of something that is fake, to try to mislead the people. So as I said, please, if you have a chance, go for it. Be vaccinated. But of course, I'm not saying that vaccination must be made compulsory, because even World Health Organization has not said anything must be made compulsory. But please, read up all the facts, listen to all the facts, then you make up your own mind. You decide whether you want to be vaccinated. So this is another aspect which I feel is very important that you all have to bear in mind. So I think once again, I think with this my remarks, I would like to formally, as I said, to close this webinar. I hope all participants have benefited one way or another from this discussion, and we hope that this will lead to more interactions, this will lead to more discussions in the future involving the authorities, non-government organizations, universities, the private sector, all coming forward. Let us fight COVID-19 together, and let us do our very best to help address the many issues concerning mental well-being. We want our country to move forward. If we want the people to be more productive, if we want the country to succeed, then first, the most important thing in mind is this: we must have the people with, as I said, good mental health. We must have people who are benefited by their mental well-being. And if that is the thing that we can benefit from, I'm sure there are a lot more that we can do. And together, we help to build a better nation for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri, for the love and care reminder to all of us. So before I end this webinar, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the participants in making this webinar a success. And I hope all of us can work together. We spread our love and care so that we can make especially the world and also our country and for us, the Malaysian, a better place. So till then, we will see all of you again in another webinar. Do take good care of yourself, stay safe, stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I already told